Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to witness the shocking moment CEO Min rides home expecting nothing more than a normal family surprise, only to find his own engagement party already waiting for him and the woman he truly loves heartbroken before he can even explain the truth. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next videos. The midday sun pressed hard against the village, flattening every sound and making every rumor travel faster. Between the tin-roofed houses, whispers moved like smoke. CEO Min was getting engaged today. His house was full of flowers, sweets, and guests. People kept stepping in and out of the gate with bright faces and knowing smiles, as if they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Laughter spilled into the road. Congratulations were already being offered before the groom himself had even appeared. And not far away, Thuong knew nothing about it. She was bent over in the tomato garden, sleeves rolled up, hair damp with sweat, carefully picking one ripe fruit after another. The plants were heavy with red tomatoes, warm from the sun, and she placed each one into her basket with patient, practiced hands. Every few minutes she paused, counted quietly, and calculated what she might earn if the whole basket sold, 10,000 per kilo. If she sold everything, the profit would be decent. Not huge, but enough to matter. Enough to make the long hours under the heat feel worthwhile. The breeze stirred the tomato leaves and carried the smell of soil and green stems around her. For Thuong, the day still felt ordinary. Hard work, a full basket, and the small piece that comes from earning something honestly. She lifted the basket once, smiled at its weight, and wiped the sweat from her forehead. She had no idea that the whole village was already talking about the man she loved. At the same time, Min was standing at the construction site with blueprints in one hand and his phone in the other, completely unaware that his own future was being arranged without him. Dust moved around the iron piles driven into the dry riverbed. Pumps roared in the background. Workers shouted short replies over the noise. Min spoke into the phone with the calm confidence of a man used to pressure. "Thang, pump all the water out of both holes this afternoon. We pour concrete for the bridge pillars tomorrow. I want a full update before dark." He listened, nodded once, then ended the call and looked over the site. Work was moving. The schedule was holding. For the first time in several days, he felt something close to relief. Then his phone rang again. He glanced at the screen. His mother. "Hello, Mom?" Her voice came fast, bright, almost too cheerful. "Come home right now, son. I have a surprise for you." Min frowned. "A surprise?" "Yes, just come home. Hurry." There was something unusual in her tone, but not enough to alarm him. He looked once more at the site, handed instructions to one of the supervisors, removed his hard hat, and headed for his motorbike. "Family matter," he said. "I'll be back soon." On the ride home, wind rushed against his shirt and cooled the sweat at his neck. He tried to guess what his mother meant. A family meal? Visiting relatives? Some small event she had planned without warning, the way older people sometimes do when they want happiness to arrive before anyone can object? He almost smiled at the thought. He still had no idea what was waiting behind his own gate. The first thing he noticed when he arrived was the noise. Too many voices, too much laughter, too many people. He slowed the motorbike, then stopped completely in front of the wide open gate. Inside the courtyard, tables had been arranged. Flower bouquets sat in neat clusters. Plates of sweets and fruit were already laid out. Neighbors turned toward him at once, and almost immediately the greetings came flying toward him like something rehearsed. "Congratulations, Min. You kept this secret well. She's beautiful." He stood there with his helmet in one hand, staring as if he had walked into the wrong house. Then his mother appeared, smiling with obvious pride. She came straight to him, took his arm, and spoke as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Come inside, son. Today is your engagement party." For a second, Min thought he had heard her wrong. "My what?" She laughed lightly, still glowing with satisfaction. "Your engagement party. I've prepared everything. You just need to be happy." The courtyard seemed to tilt around him. He looked at the guests, the flowers, the trays, the house, and finally back at his mother. Engaged to who? Her answer came easily, too easily, to Thao, Of course, she's inside, she's beautiful, well-mannered, and from a good family. I chose carefully. Something cold slid through him. The smiles around him suddenly felt unreal. The congratulations sounded sharp now, almost cruel. He looked at his mother as if seeing a stranger wearing her face. "Mom," he said, his voice low and strained, "why would you do this? I never agreed." Her smile faded, but only a little. "I'm your mother. I know what is best for you." The words landed harder than they should have, because they were spoken with love and control mixed so tightly together that he could not separate them. Around them, the party still moved on. Guests chatted, chairs scraped. Laughter continued from one corner of the yard. But inside Min, everything had already changed. He followed her into the house because his legs moved before his mind caught up. In the living room, under warm yellow light, Thao stood waiting in a carefully chosen dress, her face shy and hopeful. And the moment Min saw her, guilt struck him before anger did, because he understood at once that this surprise was about to wound more than one heart. Inside the house, the warm yellow light suddenly felt heavy and wrong. Tao stood near the center of the living room, dressed beautifully, her hair neatly done, her face carrying that fragile mix of shyness and hope that made the whole situation even harder for Min to bear. She looked like someone who had been told this was the beginning of something joyful. Min, meanwhile, felt as if he had walked into a trap built out of flowers, sweets, and good intentions. His mother stood beside him, one hand still resting on his arm. "Come," she said softly. "Today is important. Everything is prepared." Min turned and looked at her, and for the first time in a very long while, love and anger rose inside him at the exact same moment. "Mom," he said, struggling to keep his voice steady, "Thao and I are just friends. I never agreed to this." The words landed hard in the room. His mother's smile faded. "I chose her because she is good for you. You're old enough to start a family. I don't want to wait forever." Min felt the pressure in his chest grow sharper. "You can't decide an engagement for me. I'm your mother," she replied. "Everything I do is for your happiness." That hurt more than a shout would have hurt, because she meant it. She truly believed she was helping him. But good intentions did not make this less cruel. Min looked once at Thao. She had lowered her eyes now, and the color in her face was slowly disappearing. "Can we talk outside?" he asked her. Thao nodded quietly. They stepped into the backyard, where the noise from the front courtyard sounded distant now, like a celebration happening in another life. A few plastic chairs sat in the dim light. The evening wind moved gently through the trees. Min stopped near the wall and turned toward her. "Thao, I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I truly had no idea my mother planned any of this." She tried to smile, but her eyes were already wet. "I thought maybe you didn't know," she admitted, "but I still came." The honesty in that answer made his guilt heavier. She looked down at her hands before speaking again. "I liked you for a long time, Min. I never said it, because I thought if you felt the same, you would tell me one day. Then your mother came to my family and spoke with so much certainty. She made it sound like your future was already decided." Min closed his eyes for 1 second. He hated this. Not because he had to reject her, but because someone else's choice had brought her here to be hurt in public. "I care about you," he said slowly, "but only as a friend. If I let this continue, I would be lying to you." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "So there really is someone else," she whispered. Min did not answer directly. He didn't need to. The truth was already written all over his face. Thao nodded faintly, accepting what she saw, even though it hurt. "Then, thank you for being honest." He looked at her with real sorrow. "You deserve honesty, not a life built on pressure and pretending." For a moment, they stood in silence. Then Thao drew a long breath and straightened her shoulders. "I'm hurt," she said, "but I understand." Min's voice dropped lower. "I'm sorry," she gave him one last weak smile. "I hope one day we can still be friends." Then she turned and walked back toward the house alone. When Min returned to the courtyard, the celebration had already started to die. Guests were gathering their bags, lowering their voices, avoiding his eyes. The bouquets remained on the tables, untouched and awkward now. The trays of sweets looked almost ridiculous. His mother sat alone at the corner of one table, holding a glass of water she had not even tasted. For the first time that evening, she looked tired. "Mom," Min said. She did not look at him right away. "I only wanted you to be happy." He swallowed hard. "My happiness has to be mine to choose." At last she turned to him, disappointment filling her face. "And what if you choose wrong? Then it will still be my mistake to make," he said. Those words created a distance between them that had never existed before. One by one, the last guest left. Motorbike engines faded down the village road. The flowers stayed where they were, witnesses to a celebration that had never truly happened. After a long silence, Min walked toward the gate, but he did not go home to sleep. He rode straight to Sung Thuong's house. When she opened the door, her eyes were already swollen from crying. She had heard the rumors. Of course she had. In a village like this, gossip always arrived before truth. Thuong, Min said, his voice raw. "It wasn't my choice. I didn't know. I never agreed." But the pain in her face told him that tonight, the truth had come too late. While Lee Sung Thuong spends her day quietly harvesting tomatoes and thinking only about honest work, the entire village is buzzing with shocking news. CEO Min is supposedly getting engaged, but Min knows nothing about it. He is still at the construction site, focused on bridge work, until his mother urgently calls him home. Expecting a simple family surprise, he returns to find flowers, guests, sweets, and congratulations waiting for him, along with the devastating truth that his mother has arranged an engagement party with Thao without his consent. Trapped between guilt and anger, Min is forced to reject Thao face to face, knowing she is innocent in the situation. The party collapses, his mother is left heartbroken, and Min realizes the cost of standing up for his own future. That same night, he rushes to Sung Thuong's house to explain, but the village rumors have already reached her first, and the woman he truly loves is left deeply wounded before he can tell his side of the story.